And good morning. Alex Ansary here. Today's date is November 6th, 2023. So, in about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to be reading this blog that I wrote in 2019 on how to mediate the effects of the solar cycle. So, let's start with some introductions. Let's warm up. At the moment that I'm speaking, we're coming out of another period of intense geomagnetic activity. And there's several websites that I've told you about where you can monitor this in real time. And as I've said to you many times, we're all affected in some way by these solar flares. Sometimes people become aggressive. Sometimes people become hypersexual. Sometimes people become hypercreative. Some people experience psychic attack, as I do believe that the solar energy amplifies the paranormal, the supernatural. People might end up frustrated in traffic, not only because they're agitated from the effects of the solar flares, but because people around them are driving erratically or slower than normal. Because in my observations, some people have a decline, a sharp decline in cognitive function. So they're not thinking as fast. It's more difficult for them, for example, to operate in traffic. And you'll also notice after geomagnetic storms, or at least I notice these things, I'll notice that the self-checkout line takes a lot longer to go through. There was one day at Target where it seemed that 3 women were taking over 5 minutes to check out. And I'm aware that there's something about them that's not fully operational. As they sit there on their smartphone, as they sit there in a semi-state of confusion, and as the female checkout cashier also seemed to be a bit frustrated as well. So we need to take these moments and breathe. As I've discussed to you in previous videos, there are certain Qigong exercises and Qigong exercises where you can focus on your internal energy. There are some very unspiritual people, by the way, in our world, in the church, in Islam. That should not take away from the good people that may also be in those religions as well. You need to have the gift of discernment. Do not attack members of all faiths or certain faiths. Understand there's going to be some good folks and some bad folks. So what I have to say on that note is that I've come across a lot of naive Christians and Muslims that think that it's demonic to engage in meditation. It's how you meditate. It's what your intention is. It's whether you're focusing on your God-given internal energy or your auric field, or if your intention is to do harm or to channel spirits, for example, that have no documented history of helping humanity. So I'm articulating to you how I define New Age. That's often how I define New Age. Those that deal with channelers and a belief that certain aliens or aliens in general are here to help us and fight off the bad guys, i.e. good cop, bad cop. So this gnosis, this knowledge, this wisdom about the solar flares affecting human consciousness, this is old school. However, there's a lot of religious books that don't really talk about it. Although the Bible does talk about the light, and there are references to the sun going through great changes in Islam, i.e. the prophecy of the sun rising in the west, which sounds to me like a pole shift. And there may be more in Islam that discusses the sun. I don't know, as I've never studied the Quran closely. But I will say that this is ancient knowledge that is reawakening at this time. So while I don't subscribe to the idea of a collective shift in consciousness, I do believe that in the era of time that we are in, it is a time in which certain human beings may be more tapped into certain knowledge when it's given to them. And so when I go back to Portland, Oregon, not physically, but in spirit, by bringing back Outside the Box TV with Alex Ansary, I'm not interested in making money. I'm not interested in finding a girlfriend or a significant other, although I could attempt that, but it probably isn't a good idea. It probably isn't a good idea to try to be popular. I want to help the souls that I can help out. And Portland, Oregon has human beings within it, some of which have the intellectual, intuitive openness and understanding to understand the things that I have to say. Even if there's a dark side of Portland, Oregon, there are some intuitive, tapped in individuals who I've never met in Portland, Oregon, who may have moved to Portland, Oregon, believing that it is a spiritual place. Many have come to realize that it's not as spiritual as they thought it was, but they're already there and they're frustrated and they're like, oh my gosh, I better get out of here. And a lot of people have left Portland after moving into Portland. And so there's a chance that my knowledge about the sun, my knowledge about what is to come with other things, my knowledge about the spiritual warfare in Portland, Oregon, that it can reach those with the eyes to see and ears to hear. And I'll also add a third component, the heart. Those that are in their heart center that will understand that I am a good soul that's trying to help them, not manipulate them into the dark arts. And so you're going to hear me in today's essay talk about Dion Fortune. And what I want to say about that, the idea of us putting our minds together, meditating on the same symbols at the same time to create a positive outcome, harnessing the power of the sun. I believe that certain communities like Portland, Oregon, may have individuals within it that may have the ability to work with other individuals in a mass meditation. Whereas in Southwest Colorado, where many people are into the dark side, are into Odin worship, are into Donald Trump, are into the illusions of separation. Same thing with where I'm at right now and other places in the US, in New York, in other places in California, there is a lot of wickedness. So I will still try to put out information that anybody can access around the world, wherever you may be located. It's only the people in Portland, Oregon, the city of my birth, that I have an energetic connection to, that I'm going to make the extra step, put in the extra effort to reach these people. Because as far as I'm concerned, in this day and age of the internet, with our ability to access all kinds of information, people are selling themselves short if they're only going to study palm reading, channeling, divination, astrology as they understand it. And again, there's new wave astrology where a lot of people focus on service to self, their next girlfriend, their next boyfriend, their next job, their next big break, their next paycheck, their next chocolate chip cookie. As opposed to other understandings, more ancient understandings of astrology that these new wave astrologers don't really take the time to understand. There is obvious disinformation in the conspiracy circles with the algorithmic promotion of flat earth material, which often is promoted alongside neo-Nazi material or material promoting Adolf Hitler or saying that the Holocaust did not exist. There is nothing spiritual, I repeat, there is nothing spiritual about a belief system that suggests that the sun does not exist, that the sun is a light bulb, that people that talk about the influence of the sun are evil. I believe in my heart that people that believe such things are overtaken by demonic forces, and some people in my lifetime have done nasty things to me because I've talked about the archons, because I've talked about Russia and what may be coming, because I've talked about the sun, and because I am what I am ethnically. And when you put what I am ethnically combined with the things that I talk about, it's going to make some people with demonic attachments very, very angry with me. And I'm just going to share this with you briefly and get right to the material in about 1 minute. A witch out there who listens to my content decided to engage in an attack on my location in the last 24 hours. And so an orb did manifest in my reality, and it was deactivated, and it was malicious. And it could have been random, but it was not alien. And so I'm here to tell you that not everything is alien and demonic. Some things really do come from human beings that dabble in the dark arts, that are so immature that they don't realize that their own anger and rage can give rise to certain poltergeist energies that can take on a life of their own, attacking people in the middle of the night. And these things are not of God, and these humans are not of Christ. And so instead of engage in witch wars, we ask God for protection from not only the unseen realms, but the human realms as well. So let's begin. How to wisely mediate the effects of the solar cycle. This is the most important area of conversation. What we can do. What can we do? We seek to answer that question practically, both individually and collectively. I believe that many are still missing a piece of the puzzle, even though many of us are already waking up spiritually to our soul connection to the sun. I don't remove the idea of God from this concept, nor do I fit into the box of a sun worshiper. I'm referring to the deep, energetic interconnections between all things and how massive bursts of solar energy can be used for the highest good when embarking on new projects and breakthroughs, especially those that positively empower and enlighten humanity. The individual is advised to learn basic meditation techniques to cope with an influx of energy. I'm going to be abbreviating a great deal of thought on meditation without promoting any specific techniques or methods. A great deal of one's success is centering themselves, and it comes from believing and visualizing your tools working. And I'm just going to add in, I did put out some information several weeks ago on basic meditation practices. There are a number of online meditation classes that can now be found teaching various techniques of centering, psychic protection, or protecting yourself from spiritual warfare for those that prefer that phrase instead, and grounding to the earth, also putting up a shield. There are many tutorials that have been made available in recent years on the internet. You are advised to learn how to meditate without psychologically relying on other humans or healers. This is an important thing to understand as we are all tasked with upholding the rules of internal balance. So like I said, by the way, in a recent YouTube video, there are people out there that will take your money, that will allegedly clear you of energetic or entity attachments, and they will claim to heal you. And in reality, the situation could be made much worse, or you could be given a false sense of security. Also, certain people may offer to remove certain entities from you, but once they remove that entity, if you're not actually doing what you need to do to protect yourself and stop attracting those energies, it may come back with a fury. As an ongoing practice, I suggest engaging in meditation for limited periods under the sun without, of course, burning yourself and overexposing yourself. Sunrise and sunset is recommended, and if you're able to sun gaze, then I would do so. I'm going to add in that there's going to be certain times in which it's too bright to look at the sun. For example, periods in which there's an eclipse. You don't want to look at the eclipse period, but I'm talking about sun gazing during periods in which an eclipse is nearby. So you need to know what you can handle and what you cannot without damaging your eyesight. But I'm here to tell you that many of us, maybe it's some of us with a certain genetic line, some of us do have the ability to sun gaze and take in that prana, take in that ki, take in that chi, while others, for whatever reason, including possible genetic reasons, they may seem or feel that they are allergic to the sun. There is a person by the name of Cameron Day. You might want to check out his channel. He used to talk about the archons, but now he talks about raising your testosterone naturally without steroids. And while I don't follow his content closely, he does talk about raising your testosterone by getting exposure to the sun and not getting a ton of exposure all at once, but getting it a little bit at a time. And I think he put out the video in spring. Right, so when the solar cycle for the year was kicking off in spring, in April, in May, he put out that video. And so when we're at that point in time in the year, that's when we want to come out of our caves, so to speak, as many of us are inside during the winter and probably not outside, even grounding to the earth with bare feet. Those are the times in which we want to be gradually increasing our dose, if you will, a dosage of the sun. 5 minutes one day, 6 minutes another day, 7 minutes another day. until, of course, they can sit under the sun for a longer period of time. And so this is recommended, folks, other than getting synthetic vitamin D. Continuing with the blog. Adjusting to the changes in flux of the Earth's magnetic field will become more important as time goes on. Some geographical areas may have more chaotic magnetic fields than others, like Portland, Oregon, which is one of the reasons why I moved away from that paranormal city with a lot of people into the dark arts. So this can challenge our mental health and our physical health, also our dream states, increase in nightmares. And also studies have shown a correlation between heart attacks and geomagnetic storms. Your goal in learning meditation is to cope with the excess energy or thoughts. You can even say thought forms. This is part of protecting your health in mind, body, and spirit. So I just want to add in that I saw someone talk about having to go to the hospital because they had a heart attack, but they didn't say anything about the solar flares. And, I'd like to tell all these people about the influence of the solar flares, but a lot of people aren't open to it. I saw someone else clutch their heart when there was an intense geomagnetic storm at 1 o'clock in the morning. And while many people have contacted me regarding the truth movement, my past broadcasts, off-grid living, very rarely do people actually comment on the contribution that I made to consciousness regarding the effect of the solar flares and the solar cycles. And hopefully, folks, before I pass on from this body, I will be able to reach far more people and help educate them about how they are, in fact, affected by the solar flares. And you can see more wars, more attacks on ethnic groups also in Gaza, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, also attacks in the streets here in the United States, also an increase in car accidents and other health events. So I first learned of a traditional Buddhist technique called Vipassana, spelled Vipassana, in 2002 during a 10-day retreat spent miles away from Portland, Oregon. Okay, so it was up in Washington State. It was about an hour and a half to get up there. It's a very simple process that focuses attention on the sole observation of the breath through the nose. Breathing in and breathing out at a natural rate without controlling the pace, right? So deep breathing is great, but this is just observing the breath as it is through the nose. The meditation centralizes on maintaining a state of non-reactiveness, as sensitivity to all sensations in the body is heightened. As one becomes less reactive to stimuli, one becomes more aware also of other sensations or thoughts. So it's about being equanimous, non-reactive, breathing in, breathing out, observing the breath without reacting to it, attempting to refrain from scratching that itch on your shoulder, something that's very difficult for me to actually do. As sunspot activity magnifies human activity and energy levels, i.e. Alexander Chizhevsky's Human Mass Excitability Index, conscious humans can choose to align their activities with the sun's activity in a strategic manner. Major life plans such as moving, changing jobs, launching a new business, or other major life changes can be initiated intentionally during increases in solar activity, while less active periods for the sun can be used for rest and introspective thought or contemplation on the next step. And I just want to add in, there are many people that will also feel tired during the peak of a geomagnetic storm, such as myself. So we will be energized during a certain phase of the geomagnetic storm or the increase in solar cycles or solar flares. And there'll also be another period in which we really want to lay down and sleep. Problem areas prone to violence, ranging from gang violence to bipartisan political extremism, i.e. Antifa versus the Trump supporters. These areas can and should be avoided during peak solar activities or moved away from in advance. if they are deemed too unsafe or unstable. That is, if you can move somewhere else. Where I am right now, right? It's where home is. And I don't have the friendships that I need, the associations that I need. I'm not connected with conscious off-grid communities to even take a vacation, folks. And I really, really would love a vacation, but I do not have those allies in my audience, unfortunately. There's still time to learn about the solar cycles if this information is new to you. It may bring some clarity to the causes of some of the disturbances and breakthroughs in our life. Examine the solar activity charts for all the years you have been alive and look for the peaks, the rises and falls, and find the bottom point and identify where you were in the cycle. A similar approach can be used to study financial markets. I've posted articles at solarmaxnews.com that relate to that. I've talked about it in the past, articles that have come out in Reuters questioning if the geomagnetic storms are influencing stock traders at Wall Street. When one reaches that level of awareness of the solar activity, correlations to human affairs, other things will also begin to make sense. It's like learning to ride a bike and you won't forget it once you've learned it. Athletic activity is highly recommended at key parts of the year and cycle where there are peaks in geomagnetic activity. Every 28 to 29 days, the sun points at Earth, releasing some level of solar energy towards the Earth, even if the sun is in a quiet phase. So there's a lot of people out there into grand solar minimum that are totally blind to these effects. And they've been programmed to discriminate and hate on individuals that have a deeper understanding of the sun's effect. I have come to believe that these various periods contribute to peak performance in some areas, including intellectual capacity as well as enhanced spiritual insight. So personally, I'm getting back into working out, and we're in the solar maximum cycle, although we're not at the peak. You don't have to be at the peak to be impacted by the rise in the sunspots and the geomagnetic storms. Okay, there doesn't have to be a ton of sunspots and geomagnetic storms for you to be impacted every few weeks or every few months. And that impact, by the way, can be so strong, especially if you're hypersensitive and you have the right genetics. It can be so strong that you are still powered up by that solar flare for weeks or even months. It's like your body almost retains the energy like a super battery. And by the way, there's an individual by the name of Maurice Cotterell. He talks about the idea of soul voltage, how some humans have a greater soul voltage than other humans that have a very low soul voltage. So people with a very low soul voltage that don't get enough real light, that look at too much blue light, they may be really resistant with this information. They may think that people like me are idiots for talking about this connection between mankind and the sun. An understanding of the solar influence over testosterone could be beneficial to those suffering from age-related ailments, as well as those engaging in sports activity or some other kind of personal exercise routine. By the way, Donald Trump will say, hey, the sun is beneficial in overriding the recent health event. And even though I'm not a fan of Donald Trump or Operation Warp Speed, which he has defended, I think that there is something to getting vitamin D coming from the sun to heal yourself from all kinds of things, especially if you are consciously engaged in a self-healing practice. Also engaged in Qi ball exercises, also engaged in doing Qigong under the sun. All these things can be very, very beneficial, and it's also believed that sun exposure strengthens the human auric field. I have often thought of the benefits of a scientific study on the solar influence over strength training, i.e. weight training or bodybuilding, powerlifting, even boxing, martial arts, to demonstrate with quantifiable evidence that there is a connection, there is a correlation. I have not seen such studies, Yet I suggest that it would be of great value to expand research in such directions. And by the way, when I got up today at 6 o'clock, I edited my second episode that I'm going to turn in to Open Signal, also known as Portland Cable Access. And so while that takes work for me to sit down and edit, we had significant geomagnetic activity last night, right? I had a little bit of insomnia, but I did sleep better. I also didn't have coffee in the last 24 hours. I quit coffee for a month and I went back on coffee, and wow, now I'm going to get back off coffee again. But when I woke up feeling rested after 9 hours of sleep, even though the night before we had a witch attack, I felt all that energy and prana within me and focus that I edited together without stopping, without being distracted, my second episode for Portland Cable Access. And if you wonder what I'm actually turning in, you can take a look at that episode where I expose right-wing fake conspiracy trash that takes us away from the true gnosis of the corruption taking place worldwide, also known as the NWO. I have seen the reoccurring synchronicity of solar flare researchers sharing new or even similar ideas during similar years or periods in which the solar cycle is rising after a solar minimum period. The term 100 monkey syndrome could define a way in which this process may be working. To summarize, when one is learning a new understanding or idea, it is spread to other elements of the species, right? Like telepathically, psychically, through non-local awareness. Like I said, folks, you don't necessarily have to be of the light or a follower of Christ or a good person to have psychic potential. Many people with psychic potential are on the dark side. So when I talk about the 100th monkey syndrome, there's a positive application of that. There's also a dark side to that. As we see the rise in radical extremism, even outside the borders of the U.S. and even outside of white European countries. We see it also in India, in the Middle East. We see the unrest and the hatred all over the planet. I remember how many writers and researchers, including myself, could be seen waking up to the potential incoming results of the changes in the sun as solar cycle 24 was beginning to rise. It never seemed random to me at the time, as it already appeared to me to be a collective energetic response to the solar cycle firing back up. So this info is going out now at a time in which solar cycle 25 is beginning and will peak in a few years. That's at the moment in which I wrote that in 2019. It's now at the moment that I'm speaking to you, November 2023, and we're getting closer to the peak. So yes, you are going to deal with some people acting possessed and engaging in the dark arts, using the solar energy, even if they don't know that they're using the solar energy. And certain humans, by the way, in certain areas in North America, may unconsciously be creating these poltergeist energies that some people think is the gang stalking program, but it's really these thought forms created by some humans into the dark arts that don't have control over their own mind yet. This is why it's actually dangerous for some of us to engage with other unhealthy human beings on the internet, because the internet is a conduit for spiritual forces going back and forth. And what I would like to see is this spiritual conduit of the internet be used for a higher good. More on that later. I remember going out more in search of adventure and love in all the wrong places, while still living in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. The nightlife and bar scenes would energetically pull me in to cure my boredom, my boosted energy levels, and appealing to my heightened state of curiosity and sexual desire. It seemed to me to be the appropriate thing for me to do at my age. It was a result of those experiences that other knowledge about humanity was gained that I didn't find elsewhere online, on the internet, or in any other study or book, or from any other teacher, and certainly not David Icke, Alex Jones, or any, quote, conspiracy theorist, mainstream conspiracy theorist. But there was Burl Payne, and I've mentioned him many times. You can look him up. I have seen and experienced many expressions of the spirit of excess during peak solar activity periods. When solar activity becomes more active, so do humans who also erupt in various ways, including sexuality, warfare, and other action-oriented ways. A superpower during such conditions could be perceived as an individual or generation showing great discipline and self-responsibility with the ability to calm one's nerves and separate their psychology and mindset from that of others. Here is another short meditation tip for protecting your energy from others and pushing the energies of others out of your space. Okay, so this is one I haven't mentioned to you in some time. Visualize a protective sphere around the body's aura. Imagine that the powerful circular shield is also a mirror that reflects all external energies away from you, back to the sender. There are other versions of this in which the energy is not sent directly back, but neutralized. You should imagine that this shielding is all around you in 360, above, below, behind, rather than just in front of you. This can be done in meditation and also visualized when one has their eyes open and is out and about or actively engaging with someone, either in person, on the phone, or on the internet. The collective power of intention and thought is powerful and affects the lives of even those that are unaware of such possibilities. This is how we have instantaneous results, which plays upon human consciousness, both individual and collective. I don't believe that these ideas are overly esoteric, right? It's not sun worship, as I said, and this is not taking part in the dark arts or channeling alien beings or involving yourself in astrology or involving yourself in divination. And I'm telling you, most people prefer those routes than giving my information the time of day. But they'll listen to Sadhguru on YouTube, the Indian guru, because many people believe, right, I'm ad-libbing, I'm going off topic, but it's in topic, it's on point. When you look up information on the solar cycles, you will find Sadhguru. But Sadhguru does not speak as detailed about this as Alex Ansary. But Sadhguru, an Indian guru, and many people look to Indian gurus as, in some cases, superior. They believe that they are superior in some ways due to their spiritual ideas. And even though I have East Indian ancestry within me, it's not all ancestry from India. There's Anglo-Saxon bloodline there. There's Welsh, there's Austrian, there's God knows what else. And then there's the Afghani side. People will actually look down upon me for not being a typical East Indian guru like Sadhguru and others. And they will in many cases prefer their gnosis and knowledge over mine, even though I'm telling them way more about the solar cycles than they are. You cannot to this day go to my Substack and see any comments whatsoever at all responding to the things that I've written about the sun. There is one comment. I believe there is one comment. But you would think that others would be drawn to this, but they're not. But I'm telling you now that these blogs that I put together for free, that really make up their own ebook, they will later be physically put into a physical book that will be read by humans in the future. And I can guarantee you now that humans in the future, seeing the effects of the solar cycles, they will look back on the words of Alex Ansary and they will go, he was right about a lot of things. And the people of his day and age thought that his solar stuff was not relevant, that they were way more into his quote-unquote truther content, conspiracy content, geopolitical content, while ignoring the content that was actually very, very relevant. And I'm telling you now, you can go to msn.com and look at a recent article in which they talked about the geomagnetic storms and they talk about the human behavioral response. They talk about how it causes aggression, how it causes headaches, and they even give tips on how to mediate it. It doesn't get elaborate like I do, but it talks about getting rest. It talks about avoiding alcohol, stimulants, and I'm telling you folks, that's a new thing for a mainstream article like that, for them to give advice on coping with the solar flares. So this is a sign, folks, that I've been on the right path. We are already unconsciously manifesting some things that we would rather not in our lives and world. And so the point here is we need to be mindful about the things that we think about. Like I said, some people can create thought forms that can go into somebody's home and attack their body without realizing that they do not have control over their own psychic abilities. They might even deny that they have those abilities. And so some people can actually cause harm to others or disturb the sleep of others because of their invasive powers of the mind. We shouldn't remove God's will from the picture or outcome, and we shouldn't automatically accuse people of doing it if their spiritual methods are considered unknown and strange. I believe in living real spiritual principles as well as invoking the true creator of this universe. I have come to my conclusions on my own, and I feel guided to highlight the ideas of others that have something important to contribute to this concept. Burl Payne, the author of The Spin Force and the Power of Non-Thought, has contributed a great deal of insight into the potential power that humanity may be able to affect the sun's activity through the process of synchronized, that is, same time, mass meditations. He believes that such meditations may be able to calm the sun and or our planet's magnetic field. His ideas on the geomagnetic storm connection to warring behavior, right, people fighting, these were the first things that I read about that pertain to the human behavioral response to solar flares. I later saw with my own eyes the correlations on the streets of Portland, Oregon, and beyond in the news. And like I said, folks, take a look at what's happening now in Gaza, in Israel, in other places, in your city. It's not just the increase in solar flares, it's also the recent eclipse, but those energies play off of each other. There is an energetic connection between the sun and the moon. And you're not going to learn about this if you're obsessed with thinking that the moon is an alien base full of reptilian shapeshifters, okay? Even if we deal with the unseen forces in our world, some of the theories that are out there that have been put out by others, there's a reason why I steer clear of them. Even if I consumed Ike's content in the past, I've now moved on from having anything to do with people like that, right? And it's not an accident. Burl Payne's book on the spin force theorizes that another field, coined the biofield, exists around the body, and he says that it's even separate from the aura. It possesses its own spin force, which he says changes direction with moon phases and geomagnetic activity. His ebook suggests that simple magnets and wooden sticks formed into a pyramid dangling by a string can detect the strength of the field around a human, and that meditation can slow it and even change its direction. I met somebody at the Rainbow Family Gathering. I did not have a good time there, by the way. But he knew me from my show, and he showed me with a few dowsing rods how you can see how far someone's auric field reaches out from their body by walking towards them with the dowsing rods. And when the left and right dowsing rods go off to the side, that's the area in which their auric field begins. This can also be done on dogs, which I recall him saying had even a larger auric field. Burl Payne proposed that synchronized simultaneous global meditations could also calm the Earth's magnetic field. Okay, listen to me carefully and think about this. During times of geomagnetic disturbance, the purpose of this activity was to release the reactive human behavior that commonly manifests as violence and wars. And so there's something about this that really struck a deep chord with me. And as we are heading to this potential World War III situation, as we reach the solar peak, and it can also happen during solar peak 26, but I think that it's far likely to happen sooner than later. But what about the idea of using the power of our minds to quiet the Earth's magnetic field? If we were to connect through the internet, because Burl Payne, his time was very much before the internet. He did use the internet, but he passed in recent years. And he suffered from ill health in recent years. He also had a stroke, which affected his ability to speak. He may have been able to speak before. I don't know his life story or biography, but I know that he did suffer from a heart attack that caused him to have an inability to speak. And so I did interview Burrell in the past, but we were not able to understand what he was saying. Burrell's studies went as far as testing collective meditation capabilities in an experiment in the late 1970s in which he and a group of people attempted to influence the position of a satellite called Skylab, which fell out of orbit. The press reported on the unsuccessful attempt with a headline called Matter Over Mind. However, I'm not convinced that all the experiments that he conducted were pointless. I think that studies like his provided clues, and today's technology, like the internet, like social media, like Facebook groups, right? If they were managed and adminned by spiritual, mindful people not into the dark arts, not easily hijacked or possessed, which is another conversation for another time. That happens to a lot of admins of occult groups, by the way. So I think that studies like his provided clues, and today's technology can facilitate more real-time testing of such possibilities. Perhaps using more people and easier targets. The government, by the way, has engaged secretly in its own experiments of similar abilities. Also, the remote viewing program. That's what society is mostly familiar with, and they allegedly declassified many, many documents in recent years. Well, I covered that on my program. I have not read those particular studies or have tried to duplicate them in my own life. Now, Princeton University's Global Coherence Project and the Heart Math Institute have shared information about the possible evidence of collective synchronization. The events of 9/11 are cited as examples of real-world events viewed by an entire global population experiencing emotional trauma that somehow manifested on a series of machines that were either tracking the Earth's magnetic field or something else, right? I don't fully understand it, but I find this information to also be an important clue. Let's look deeper into this. There are many indicators that the Earth's geomagnetic field is a morphogenetic field that carries information evolving or changing our DNA and collecting us all to a spiritual force. Artificial technologies may also affect our DNA in less healthy or spiritual ways. The power of thought focused in a specific direction during a spike in geomagnetic activity or during a peak in the solar cycle may create major changes, even a miracle, in a time of emergency. If people together are praying for protection from harm, they might manifest some changes in the environment. It may not be moving a whole mountain, but possibly affecting a landslide or a boulder large enough to stop an advancing army attempting to cross through a particular area. So let me tell you what I was thinking about when I wrote this. Recently, you've seen posts from me on my Substack page, and in one of those posts, if you are looking at each post, you may have noticed a video of Chimney Rock, located in Archuleta County, Colorado, where I used to live for several years off the grid. It wasn't a friendly place, but it did feel mystical. It also felt like the land of the fallen angels. But it did feel spiritual. Just because one may be in a land where the fallen angels may have been, doesn't mean that it is devoid of spiritual energy, of healing energy. There may have been a reason why the fallen angels and the Hopi that later came after them resided in some of those areas, including Chimney Rock. And so Chimney Rock was a place that I read that certain Hopi shaman engaged in protective rituals in favor of the U.S. when Japan attacked, even though there's a greater story about that. You know that, I know that. But at the time, right, the people were simply aware of an attack on America, and they engaged, the shamans did at that time, at that location. And what hit me was that that location could be a location used in the future for what I'm getting into. I also came across other information that said that the people of San Luis, even though they are corrupt in Costilla County, that when they were attacked by the Ute Indians, when they tried to run into town to run out the locals, so the people that settled, that they put their minds together and prayed for an archetypal angel to come to their aid. I believe that their traditional spiritual background was Catholicism. And so this does fit into that religion or worldview as well. And I'm here to tell you that if something is done to protect individuals from harm, and if people are directly calling out to the true God of this reality, not Ashtar Command, not the Galactic Federation of Light, but the true God of this reality, then I don't see anything wrong with people putting their minds together and praying and focusing on the cross, the Christian cross, or other archetypal symbols. Now, if you want to learn more about this, the book is entitled The Magical Battle of Britain. And if you want a copy of this, see me after class. My email is solarstorm333@proton.me. That's solarstorm333@proton.me. If you want a copy of this ebook, The Woman Has Passed. I think that if Dion Fortune was here today, if she is watching us, maybe she's listening to me right now, then I would think that Dion Fortune would want you to have this information. So contact me after class if you want the ebook, and if you want to have a discussion about setting up to be frank with you, a secret group that includes Facebook, but also includes non-Facebook groups where these ideas are talked about out in the open. But I don't think that people involved in the dark arts, that people involved in witchcraft on the dark side, people involved in racism, people involved in a lower state of consciousness, I don't believe that people like that, that have not been screened, should be invited to bring their own energetic disturbances and demons to such groups. And I think most of you, 95% of you that are listening now, should absolutely understand why that is. So let's talk about Dion. And if you type in psychic self-defense and you go down far enough, you'll actually see a video in which I read at random key portions of her book, which was written, I believe, in the 1930s. She was a spiritualist in Britain who had a secret group to whom she sent letters in which collective prayers and intentions were applied by her followers against the rise of the Nazi regime during World War II. So her white magic, so to speak, invoking Christ and King Arthur and Merlin, versus the Thule Society, the black magic, the dark arts of Adolf Hitler, as he had his own castle in Germany in which these things were discussed. And you can find documentaries about that, but they don't talk about Dion. They don't talk about the deeper things that were going on. So she organized groups of meditators to put their minds together to derail the movements of the Third Reich, even targeting the Fuhrer himself with the power of their synchronized meditations. I discovered her book, The Magical Battle of Britain, after already reading her book, Psychic Self-Defense, when I visited the Coast to Coast AM website. They had a featured article about the legends of Dion's psychic warfare program. I saw that as synchronicity and a sign to look further into her story and the techniques that she used. She invoked various archangels and the spirit of King Arthur, his knights, Merlin, and other sacred symbols, such as the Sacred Cross, which were already deeply embedded into the collective British psyche. There are also darker applications of such imagery, and I would recommend using caution before getting involved in unknown rituals, and never without strong levels of spiritual protection. How can a few focused, morally balanced individuals create a miracle for themselves, either individually or collectively, in a time of emergency or chaos? The power of solar energy may deepen the amount of energy available to work with, regardless of its intentions. Baptizing one in the light of God, declaring "Thy will, not mine, be done," and visualizing God's protection in action is already a traditional go-to for humanity in times of crisis. The oldest town in Colorado had a legend of retaliating Indians of the Ute tribe turning back upon seeing a huge giant figure standing in defense of the town after the townspeople put their minds together in a synchronized prayer. Let me also say that if a bunch of people are pissed off at you, even if you are a being of light and they have dark energy, they can adversely impact that person's life. And so these things are not universally used for good. These techniques are also used for darkness. And just so you know, I'm speaking from my soul and reading this information that resonates. I do not collect books on magic. I do not read chaos magic. I'm not here to demonize those that do, but I do not feel a spiritual calling to look into that. Rather, I will look at the cliff notes, so to speak, of those that have already gathered that intel. This manifestation can't be described as something that was collectively generated by collective prayer, aided by pre-existing religious Catholic symbolism of the local culture. I find this legend especially interesting because the ideas presented by Dion Fortune included the visualization of a powerful, larger-than-life protector or guardian standing guard, with maybe a sword or a shield. The following is one excerpt from her book, The Magical Battle of Britain, which gives us an idea of a collective thought form prayer that she secretly sent out to her group. The book was later published for the public so they can read the letters she secretly sent her group through the mail. Okay, and I'm quoting now. Personally, I think that it is a blind force, not an intelligent one, that it finds a channel through the personalities of unregenerate human beings who provide the intelligence it does not possess. I conceive of this dark influence as the accumulation of evil thought forms in the group mind of the race and place, an evil heritage that has come down undispersed from the dawn of German history, and even earlier, and that overshadows the crowded psychology of the German people to this day. There can be no reform of Germany as a political factor in Europe until this dark psychic heritage that contaminates her is dispersed and neutralized. Propaganda that appeals to the conscious minds of Germans is as futile as an argument with a lunatic, for it is not in their power to respond. There is one thing and one thing only that can disperse this dark cloud of ancestral evil and set the souls of Germans free, and that is the power of the Christ. And we must bring this power to bear. Let us visualize Germany as a vast marsh of human helplessness and ignorance, covered by the thick black cloud of ancient evil. The sunlight of the Christ, again, the sunlight of the Christ, cannot reach it to dry up the stagnant waters and give it health and fertility until this cloud has been dispersed. Then let us see the angels of the Lord hovering over it and directing lightning flashes at it from the points of their swords. These flashes can cause thunderstorms to break out in the cloud, rifts appear, the clouds begin to break up, and the sunshine of Christ shines through the land beneath. This method, if persisted, will soon disperse the cloud. And remember, we are striking at the cloud and not the land beneath it. Once this is dispersed, the healing sunshine will do the rest. And I'm just going to add in, right? We know that they are chemtrailing. We know that they have now admitted their geoengineering program, and it was previously seen to be a conspiracy theory. And so we can see now in the middle of rural America, whether it be Costilla County, whether it be Archuleta County, whether it be Durango, Colorado, whether it be Grand Junction, massive chemtrailing. We can also see major U.S. cities without chemtrailing. We don't really know what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. But let us be grateful for those days in which there is no geoengineering. Take those days in which you have clear blue skies and thank God above for the fact that we still do live in a reality where they have not completely covered up the sun. But you know also that in the event of mutual assured destruction, in the event of World War III or World War IV, depending on how you want to call it or see it, we could see a situation in which the sun is covered up if there is nuclear warfare and the sun goes black. This has also allegedly been prophesied in the Bible, a day in which the sun goes black. They also crucified Jesus Christ between the 6th hour and the 9th hour during a eclipse. There's many Christians that read the Bible that have no knowledge of Jesus Christ being sacrificed during the eclipse. And so I told you recently, you need to amplify your spiritual protection in these eclipse days that we are in. And even though, right, I feel that I'm at risk, I rather die brave on my feet, serving God, telling you the things that you need to know before these world events manifest, than die on my knees of sickness, a coward. Okay? So, 2 weeks later, Dion Fortune analyzed the esoteric forces set in motion by the recent National Day of Prayer. These public events were observed throughout the war, and like all movements involved mass psychology of whatever kind, had their esoteric implications. Dion's thinking was to go with the grain of the symbols already in use in their society, which meant something to the group mind, while the other side also attempted their version of magic and sun symbolism, but for control and destruction rather than for freedom and creation. By the way, Dion died of an illness after the war. I'd like to know more about why that illness occurred. But Dion Fortune was a public person. Okay, she did stand up against the Fuhrer, against Adolf Hitler, and there may have been some energetic blowback, but just because she passed on does not mean that she is in hell. Remember, we must prepare for the afterlife, and in this world, evil does not really come against evil. It rewards evil people, gives them money, makes sure that their jobs are secure, that they have relationships, that their carnal desires are met. Whereas true people of God, true women of God, true men of God, they may suffer in this world. Just because men of God, women of God may suffer in this world, that should not motivate us to then join the dark side and to think that there are no consequences, that there is no karma, to do as thou wilt. But there's many amongst us, ladies and gentlemen, that are on that wavelength vibration. They can talk all day long about raising their vibration in a new age sense without knowing the first thing about becoming godly and standing against the Satan of this world. Half a century on, we should pause to reflect on whether these remarks about Germany could equally be said about most nations in the world, including our own, including others, be it China, Russia, others, right? Because I think it's a mistake to just blame the US for the new world order, for the one world government. If we're honest with ourselves, we can see the role that China and Russia is being positioned to play in what is to come and what they do to their own people. So a similar remedy might be appropriate to bring about positive changes. I do believe that technology today can make the sharing of such ideas easier. Unfortunately, many ideas that are shared use similar techniques and have been used to empower the rise of global fascism and neo-Nazism. Many white supremacist groups also use the symbolism of King Arthur and the cross, as well as symbols from Norse mythology, with Odin being the name for their god, right? There are many that say that they follow Jesus while also following Odin and the Thule Society or Nazi Germany or Adolf Hitler. You cannot have two masters. Many of these symbols manifest today as tattoos and on social media avatars as they protect the real identity and names, i.e. the maintenance of secrecy. There's a lot of people out there that will not tell you their real name in chat rooms and on the internet and on YouTube, and that's for a reason. Although in this day and age, and I'll be talking about this in a future book, there is nothing wrong with men and women of the light becoming anonymous public figures because of the level of darkness that is rising on this planet. So just because I went public and I took the risk and I faced the consequences, just so you know, for being public and using my given birth name, right? It brought bad things to me. However, I'm not dead yet. And even if death is coming, I will still say the words that need to be said in order of helping as many souls as possible. Because by doing that, I empower my own soul and I am investing my time and energy in the afterlife, even though I am still in the physical body. Chat rooms and online groups have become acceptable means of synchronizing ideas and coordinating thoughts, i.e., Telegram, Discord, Facebook, Twitter. The rest of society is far behind in using certain techniques and ideas to derail the forces of darkness operating today. So let me get more specific. People involved in the dark arts, people involved in neo-Nazism, people involved in pushing the white genocide mythos, they are way more organized with using these symbols than the people that are resisting them, right? Antifa is not an example of a love and light, a true conscious resistance to fascism. They have their own fascism. So there is not, that I'm aware of, a truly conscious, Christ-serving organization that is pushing back against the dark arts. What we have right now are a lot of unstable people, a lot of undisciplined psychics, many of them that don't even believe in demons, archons, or jinn, yet they access psychic abilities and they access darker energies while acting like demons don't exist. And so the people that are involved in the dark side, as far as I can tell, they are the majority. Okay, the majority of the people on the planet are not waking up and are not engaged in the true light. And the New Age movement in many cases goes along with demonizing immigrants. As I told you in a recent video, you can go to James Gilliland's Facebook page and see that everything that he posts is false. And everything that he posts regarding migrants is attacking them. Unless, of course, he's going to get on board the pro-Palestine movement. There's nothing wrong with defending Palestinians. What's happening to them is absolutely wrong. There's calls to actually kick them out of the country and ban them from the country. And that's gonna lead to more discrimination against other groups. But these people that act like they care about the Palestinians are forgetting about other Muslim lives. They're showing themselves to be hypocrites. So society needs to catch up. And because I'm shadow banned, because the AI algorithm is holding me back from reaching people, it's the responsibility of you to take my words now, to take this video now and put it in a large spiritual group on Facebook and to encourage people to maybe consider the words that were shared in this recording. So, as I just said, certain Native American sites may be used by modern shamans in certain protection rituals, as there are known power centers that shamans of the future might be activating in a time of emergency. Certain sites during World War II became active with ritual after the U.S. was attacked by the Japanese in 1941, indicating that there is a known recent history of shamanic response to perceived threats to the country. And so, places like Portland, Oregon, where there's a lot of darkness and a lot of witches and warlocks, if these humans with psychic potential that are using the prana of the land of Portland, Oregon, whether it be Atlantis, Lemuria, some say Lemuria, it is certainly an ancient land that has a lot of prana coming from it. It also attracts a lot of unfriendly spirits and other nature spirits. More on that in a future episode. But if these areas with a lot of this spiritual energy, if the people there were to become more disciplined and to embrace the true light, not just do as thou wilt attitudes, then they might be able to protect their environment from invasion, or to create the circumstances in which attempts to invade, attempts to abduct and kidnap their women, blow up in the faces of the dark ones engaged in those wicked one world government agendas. Okay, so people would literally have to purge themselves of their demons, of their selfishness, of their lust, of their drug abuse. Although cannabis can be used spiritually, I recommend CBD and THC together, not one or the other by itself. And so people in a certain environment in mass would have to energetically shift for the better if they are to overcome what we could also call their own karma. Because this country does have a certain amount of karma coming to it, not only from what it did to the Native Americans, but what it did to the people of Afghanistan and Iraq. And the human beings alive today in cities like Portland, Oregon, in cities like Los Angeles, in cities like Seattle, in cities like Dallas, in cities like Houston, in cities like Houston, Texas, where Alex Jones reigns king. And there's so many leftists there, but are they pushing back against the genocide of Afghanistan and Iraq? In cities like Colorado Springs, in cities like Denver, Colorado, in cities like Cheyenne or near Cheyenne Mountain, in cities like New York City, in Manhattan, in Tampa Bay, in Miami, in Orlando, in these major U.S. cities in which there's a lot of New Agers and there's a lot of supposed love and light and there's a lot of channelers, are they actually taking any type of acknowledgement and recognizing the darkness of what their government has done to these third world nations? Because if they're not acknowledging it, if they're not seeking to heal that wound, if they're seeking to ignore that, if they're seeking to even bury individuals in their content and ignore them, that want to remind them that what they have done and what they've been silent about is wrong, then no, they're not going to be able to stop the karmic consequences that the United States of America, the corporation, has coming to it. So people really want to be patriots and stand up for liberty and freedom. If they really want to be Antifa and be against fascism, I have some ideas and suggestions where they could start, but they're not going to listen to me. But are they going to listen to you? Are you influential on Facebook? Do you have immediate family members that trust your judgment? Because they're not going to trust Alex Ansary, a man that they don't know, and you know that's the truth. But they may trust you. If you were to send out a newsletter, and if you were to bring them to the true light, then you could be a part of what I am suggesting. Maybe we should look at this whole thing a little bit closer. And these words, by the way, some of the words that came to me, they came to me as I walked up Chimney Rock. So even if that may be a place where there are some fallen angel spirits, that doesn't mean that we can't also access some of these spiritual places. So I mentioned Portland, Oregon. I mentioned Chimney Rock. There are other places also in New Mexico, in Colorado, in Oregon, ancient Native American spots where these energies can be used for the highest good. I wrote here that I believe the power of God can work through the four elements of earth, air, fire, and water, as all these elements are of God and are not meant to be misused for dark purposes. And I'll tell you, human beings have misused the elements for weapons of war. They have misused metal for darkness, for swords of war, for armies of darkness, and they are not serving God, even if they want to put the cross on their shield. Misuse of the elemental forces by corrupt minds and leaders likely spells bad luck, maybe even blowback of entity thought forms if their own house isn't clean. People without spiritual protection or discernment. A high state of morality and a stable energy field around their entire body is the subject of a talk by Manly P. Hall on the energy fields around the human body. And a former listener of mine, who probably like others doesn't like the new and improved Alex Ansary, who liked the more conspiratorial Alex Ansary, who was influenced by others in the conspiracy movement. Many years ago, he wrote me or sent me The Secret Teachings of All Ages, in which I had my own post office box, in which I trusted people to send me interesting things. And so people would send me articles, maybe a $10 bill here and there. One person sent me a few $100s once. And then, of course, every now and again, I would receive books. And while I don't have that book anymore, and there is a lot of negative things that have been said about Manly P. Hall, I think that for a discerning mind, there are many spiritual ideas that this man has shared that are worth revisiting. And I used to listen to his lecture regarding the magnetic field around the human body many, many years ago. Haven't listened to it in years, but if you haven't listened to it and you want more information about what I'm saying right now in this particular moment, then I would look in that direction. You can find it on YouTube. So these ideas of spiritual protection can be put into place on the micro and macro local levels by humans free of lower energies, mindsets, or lower selves. No one is perfect, but a friendly, spiritually grounded community based on justice, truth, fairness, and true equality may fare better than the magicians with weapons that occasionally steal what does not belong to them while supporting the oppression or genocide of others. Do good deeds, and good deeds shall be returned, on the topic of genocide, right? So many people are worried about the sun taking out the grid. They ought to be concerned about the genocide and the karmic consequences that come from that. So the reason why I'm not going to be afraid of the sun interrupting modern technology is that I know that if the robot apocalypse, if AI is not stopped in its tracks, it may kill all of us. Starting with, of course, the Arabic world and the Muslim world. Because if you haven't learned a damn thing about the drone attacks over Afghanistan and how immoral that is and how wrong that is, while only being concerned about your own potential microchip, while only being concerned about your own, the push for vaccines in our own Western society, if you do not care about their deaths, why should the world care about your deaths if China and Russia were to attack this country? And even if they don't attack, right, it doesn't mean that we're still free of darkness and negative entities. You don't need to have World War III and a Chinese-Russian invasion for there to be negative entities causing mayhem and death and destruction within our own country. Take a look around you. Take a look around you at the mass shootings. You can't just blame mind control to, quote, take away the guns and ignore the demonic element. So, in the movie Dark City, which I recommend, which is an allegory for the Archons, Murdoch is hunted by the Strangers. They are supernatural, paranormal entities that you might call demons, jinn, or Archons. And they are after him because of the power that he possesses, while the rest of society sleeps in a controlled reality, a dark city. He uses the power of his mind, and he creates a blast of light that neutralizes the mainframe of the machinery, freeing himself from their grips, similar to the end of They Live, in which they take out the satellite which is involved in the mind control programming. Once that satellite was taken out, by Rowdy Roddy Piper, formerly of Portland Wrestling, by the way, to add that in. As soon as that mind control programming was gone, people could see the robots, the androids around them that were masquerading as human. This, in conclusion, is rich with a metaphor about the power of humanity over dark forces when put to the test. This allegory, like others seen in The Matrix and The Truman Show, displays the hero's self-liberation through some form of personal transformation of their perceptions and consciousness, which ends their slavery to the rulers of their reality. How might humanity overcome its slavery through focused collective effort or prayer? Humanity could be asleep to a collective superpower that only works fully when we work together and truly live lives based on spiritual principles and natural universal law. Humanity could be on track with a date, with destiny, where technology used to separate and control us goes down without warning. From this event, a new world may begin, even if the old structure has to end first. So that completes this blog. And I'm here to tell you, in conclusion, there's a reason why I did not publish this in 2019, in 2020. There were increased attacks that I had to deal with after I went on Coast to Coast AM. And I spoke to you in the past about having to deal with people bearing false witness after I created a book about the solar flares and made Fourth Horse Rising, the documentary. And then when I went on Coast to Coast AM, and I talked about Dion Fortune, and I talked about using this white light, Christ-like consciousness to counteract the dark forces, I faced other interferences as well. And nobody from the Coast to Coast AM audience came over to my platform or emailed me. Only 1 to 2 to 3 emails came in. And I'm telling you, to go on one of the biggest radio shows in North America, at least that I'm aware of, there must be something really, really wrong with modern consciousness. If the things that I'm saying on a coast-to-coast radio show are not resonating. And I'm wondering if now in this year of 2023, moving into 2024, is a better time to present this information. Only time will tell. Until I speak to you next time, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within. Please take this link and share it with family, friends, and everybody that you know with the eyes to see, ears to hear, and the heartfelt consciousness to actually care for their fellow brothers and sisters on planet Earth today.